Brachos Daf Nun Tes works through various brachos which we saw in the Mishnah that one can say at various times. The beginning of the Daf will discuss the brachos we say on incidents which show HaKadosh Baruch Hu's strength and power in the world. Those are earthquakes and thunder, lightning, shooting stars, and storm winds. And then we'll have the brachos on mountains, hills, and seas, and things of that nature. The Gemara will then branch into various discussions of other things which cause a bracha because they show the world in its original state that it was at the time of creation. The later part of the daf will discuss brachos which cause us to praise the Kadosh Baruch Hu because it makes us happy and grateful, such as the bracha of Hateva Meitiv and the bracha of Shechianu. So the Gemara begins discussing Zva'is, which we said has the bracha of Shekeicha Gurasei Amali Elam, that has strength and power fill the universe. So the Gemara says, what are Zva'is? The Gemara says, Rav Katina said it's an earthquake. The Gemara has an incident. Rav Katina was walking along the road and he passed the door of somebody who was an Oiv and Yedani. Those are people who had a form of black magic in which they were able to communicate with the dead to tell the future. They would place a skull in their armpit and the skull would speak after certain incantations. So the Gemara says that Rav Katina was passing near the house of the practitioners of one of these forms of witchcraft, and there was an earthquake. So Rav Katina announced, is anybody here? Does this Oiv, does this necromancer know how to explain where these earthquakes are from? So the Oiv shouted at him and he said, Katina, why do you think I don't know? Well, why don't you know? Earthquakes, it's obvious why they happen. HaKadosh Baruch Hu remembers his children, Klal Yisrael, the Jews, in their misery as they are being tortured by the nations, and it makes him cry 2 tears. These 2 tears fall into the sea, and the sound is heard from one end to the other, and that's what we call earthquakes. So Rav Katina said, you're a liar, and what you're saying is false, because if what you're saying that is true, that there are 2 drops, there are 2 tears that fall into the sea, then there should be 2 earthquakes in a row every time. So Gemara says it's not really true. Rav Katina wasn't really speaking the truth, that it could be that there were 2 earthquakes, so you don't need to have 2 earthquakes. He just wanted to make sure that people did not start to follow these black magic practitioners. Now the Gemara says that Rav Katina gave other explanations for where earthquakes are from, and a number of other Amoraim also offered explanations. Rav Katina says where HaKadosh Baruch Hu claps his hands in anguish over Klal Yisrael, like it says, V'gamani akakapi al kapi v'ani choisi chamasi, I'll clap my hands and I'll put my anger to rest. So that causes earthquakes. Rabbi Nosson says it's the second half of the pasuk, Anocha misaneach. It's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sighs in pain, kaviyachal, like it says, V'hani choisi chamasi bam v'hinachamti, I will sigh through them and I'll find consolation. Rabbanan say HaKadosh Baruch Hu kicks the shell of the sky, or viewing the sky as a hard shell over the earth. And that's like where it says, Heydad, Hashem shouts, Heydad, Kidarchem Yana El Kol Yeshu Ha'aretz, he shouts Heydad to all those who live on the earth. Rav Bar Yaakov, it says it's when he pushes his feet underneath the Kisei HaKavod, the throne of glory, like it says, Kemar Hashem Hashem Kisei, Hashem says, the sky is my chair, V'aretz Hadar Magli, and the land is my footstool. So when he moves his feet on the footstool, it causes the earth to vibrate. Now, all these things have to be understood. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has no anger, he has no sadness, he has no sighs, he has no tears, he has no feet, and he doesn't kick. It's referring to various expressions of his relationship with the Jewish people and how that may express itself in a natural phenomenon. The Gemara says elsewhere, when we see an earthquake, we should take it as a symbol of HaKadosh Baruch Hu remembering us in the exile. Okay, now the Gemara moves on to discuss thunder. So the Gemara wants to know what causes thunder. So the Gemara has 4 different opinions. Shmuel says it's when the clouds bump into each other. The Rabbanan say it's when clouds pour water from one to the other. Rav Acha says it's when a lightning bolt strikes a cloud and smashes pieces of hail. And Rav Ashi said it's when there are hollow clouds and the wind blows across the opening of the hollowness. Just like if you blow across a bottle of wine, you'll have a sound, so the wind blowing across the cloud openings also produces a sound. The Gemara says the most reasonable explanation seems to be that of Achar Bar Yaakov, that it's the lightning smashing the hail, because the order is that there's lightning, there's thunder, and then there's rain, which could easily be formed by the smashing of those hailstones. Okay, another Gemara discusses winds. So what are winds? Gemara says it's got to be a storm wind, a really powerful and filling wind. We say the Brachos Daf, it's got to be a strong, vehement wind. And now the Gemara says a few things about these storm winds. Abaye says they don't happen at night. The Gemara says, but they do happen at night. The Gemara answers, Abaye meant that they don't start at night because people should have to have a chance to prepare for them or to shelter. So if they exist at night, it's because it started during the day. Next, Abaye says it will not last 2 hours because it says Leisakom Pamayim Tzara won't last 2 hours. But the Gemara asks, it's not true. We've seen that it lasts for 2 hours. The Gemara says, well, if it lasts 2 hours, it must have stopped in between for a while. It cannot go continuously for 2 hours. Okay, now the Gemara moves on to the next thing in the Mishnah, which was lightning. The Mishnah refers to it as Brakim. The Gemara says, what's that? So the Gemara says, lightning. So the Gemara has a few comments here. Rava says, a single bolt of lightning, or a white lightning, or a yellow lightning, or clouds which come up in the western corner of the sky and then come around to the southern corner of the sky, or two clouds which bump into each other, all of these are a bad sign. Okay, the Gemara asks, why do I need to know that? Who cares that it's a bad sign? The Gemara says, because if you see it, you should be mispalo, pray to Hashem to save us from whatever these things are portending. So the Gemara says, well, that's only if it happens during the night. If it happens in the morning, it's not a big deal. Similarly, the Gemara has another statement here. Shmuel bar Yitzchak said, clouds in the morning are not a big deal. They don't produce any significant rain. Like it says, V'chazdechem ka'anan boiker, we're criticizing in Sefer Hosea, Klal Yisrael are being criticized that your kindness is like a cloud in the morning. It gets burned off very fast. It's not important. The Gemara says that's not true, but there's an expression that people say that if it rains in the morning, the donkey drivers should fold up their sacks and they should go to sleep, meaning that rain in the morning produces so much grain that people who try to sell grain aren't even going to make a profit. It's not going to be worth it for them to travel around. They may as well just give up. So you see that the morning clouds do produce a tremendous amount of growth for crops. So where it says, no, there's two types of clouds. There's the thick clouds, what we would probably call cumulus clouds, and then there's the thin, wispy, high clouds, which we would probably call... So anyway, the Gemara says, let's go back to discussing the thunder. So the Gemara says, Rav Alexandri said, Rav Yeshua ben Levi, thunder was created to straighten out the crookedness in man's heart. When you hear thunder, it makes you return to your priorities in life. And the Gemara says, the pasuk says, "V'alakim asa shiru mufan of Hashem," created in order that we should stand in awe of Him. Now, another statement by Rav Alexandri, the name of Yeshua ben Levi, he says that somebody who sees a rainbow should fall on his face and he should bow before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like it says, like the appearance of a rainbow in the clouds. That was the appearance all around. That was the appearance of the glory of Hashem. And then it says, V'erev al ponai, and I fell on my face. This is Yecheskel describing Ma'aseh Merkava. So the Gemara says, in Eretz Yisrael, they did not like this idea of falling on the ground to bow when you see a rainbow, because it looks like you're bowing to the rainbow. Where says, okay, but you certainly should say a bracha when you see a rainbow, and the bracha should be Baruch Zocher HaBris, one who remembers the covenant that Hashem made with Noach not to destroy the world again. That's why he's bringing the rainbow. The Gemara says, hold on a second, Rabbi Shmuel says the bracha should be, Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Brachos, says it should be Nemon Bevisi V'Kayim B'Ma'amoroi. He is trustworthy in his promise and keeps his word. So the Gemara says that we combine all three, and we say Baruch Zocher HaBris, Nemon Bevisi V'Kayim B'Ma'amoroi. Okay, back to the Mishnah. Now we move on to other things. Up till now, the bracha was always Kaichuk V'Rasei Mali Eilam. His strength and his power fill the world. Now the following are all Oisem Ma'aseh Brachos, that he created the act of creation. So the first on the list here is hills and mountains. So the Gemara says, why? Well, I don't understand. On these you say Oisem Ma'aseh Brachos, that Hashem created them in His creation. What about all the things up till now? They're also part of creation. We have Psukim which discuss them. So Gemara says, no, you're really supposed to combine the two parts of the Mishnah together, and you're really supposed to say both brachas on both these things. You should say Kaichuk V'Rasei Mali Eilam and Oisem Ma'aseh Brachos on this entire list. So the Gemara says, Rava says it slightly differently. Rava says that as far as the powerful things which move, comets, earthquakes, and things like that, that are felt from far away, on those you should say his strength filled the world, because you could feel it from far. These things which don't move, a hill, a mountain, a river, a stream, on those things you can't say that. You can only say Oisei Maaseh Bereshis. Now the Gemara says, somebody who sees the sky perfectly clear without a cloud in it, that's how it was the moment of creation. You should also say Oisei Maaseh Bereshis. And Abaye says it's only if it's after a few good, solid days of clouds, and then a strong wind comes and clears them and makes the sky perfectly clear. That's the way that is when you should say the bracha. Now the Gemara says, there are those who argue. Rafram Bar Papa said in the name of Rav Chizda, since the day that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, you will never see clarity, a clear sky, the same way it was before, and therefore our sky today can't be perfectly clear. Like it says, Al b'shamayim kadros v'sak asam kesusam, I'll make the heavens wear blackness, and it should wear sackcloth. Okay, now the Gemara has a couple of other phenomena which occur rarely and have the world in the state that it was at the time of creation, and you should say the bracha Oisei Maaseh Bereshis. Now these are as follows. The first one is if you see the sun in its tekufa. This is what we call birchas achama. The second one is if you see the moon in its gvura, in its mightiness, and the third is if you see kechavim b'mesiloisam, the planets in the orbits, or the last one is mazolis kesidram, or the mazolis, the signs of the zodiac, in their proper order. On all these you say the bracha of Oisei Maaseh Bereshis. Now, what are all these things? So they are as follows. They are how they were, how each of these items were in its time of its original creation. The sun in its tekufa means that the sun is at the beginning of its yearly cycle. It's the point where it began. The sun was created at the moment of a vernal equinox, which is when spring begins, and then when it's exactly 12 hours of light and 12 hours of night. At that moment, that is when the sun began. Now that occurs every year, but only once a year does it occur. Only once in 28 years does that moment, that vernal equinox, occur in the day of the week and the hour of the day that it was when the universe was created. That's on a Tuesday evening, beginning of Wednesday, at exactly 6 p.m. when the sun was created. When a vernal equinox is at that moment, that's when it occurs. Now, the Gemara explains this further on. The Gemara says that the solar year, one complete cycle of the sun, is 365 and a quarter days. Each season is 1/4 of that, meaning that it is 91 days and 7.5 hours. That means that from season to season, each following season begins 7.5 hours later in the day than the season before. Therefore, by the time the next season begins, which is the next equinox the next year, it'll be 30 hours later in the day. This means that from year to year, the vernal equinox always occurs 6 hours later than it did before, and after 4 years, it'll be back to the time of the day that it was 4 years ago. This is true, though, but it won't be the same day because it moves forward 6 hours per year. So it'll be the same time of the day, but a day later each 4 years. Now, after 28 years, it will have cycled fully through the days, and it'll be back to the day at which it began, at the hour that it began. So therefore, once in every 28 years, the sun, at the time of the equinox, is exactly in the moment and the day of the week, which it was at the time of creation. That is when you say the bracha of Oisei Maaseh Bereshis. Now, the moon in its rising, that refers to when the moon is in the front of the set of stars in the sky, which it was at the time of Maaseh Bereshis. That is difficult to calculate, and therefore we don't say this bracha anymore. The same applies to the planets and their orbits, that again, the planets revolve through the sky, they move amongst the stars. Most stars are fixed relative to each other, but the planets move. Only when each planet is in the portion of the sky against the backdrop of stars, which it was at the time that it was created, do we say the bracha, but again, we don't know when that is, so we don't say the bracha. And the zodiac in their proper order, the Rambam explains that as when the first sign in the zodiac, which is Teleh, the sheep, the lamb, when that is due east, rising in the due east, that is when we say the bracha of mazolos in their proper order. Now, Abaye explains the cycle of the 28 years, and Abaye adds that at that time that the sun is rising at the same time of the day and day of the week as it was at the time of creation, that is when Saturn is in ascendancy. The Gemara explains elsewhere that the 7 moving lights in the sky, which are Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon, those are the 5 visible planet plus the Sun of the Moon, each take an hour, they rotate an hour at a time, each one is in ascendancy, and therefore the cycle repeats itself every 7 hours, and it also evenly repeats itself once a week, which is 168 hours, which is divisibly even by 7. And therefore the time in which the sun rose will be the same every week, which will be Saturn's time. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to the Mishnah. We said that you say a bracha when you see the Yam HaGadol. The Gemara says, though, that we said in the Mishnah that you only say that if you only see it from time to time. The Gemara says, or Rami Bar Abba says, that's if you saw it once every 30 days. You haven't seen it in 30 days. Now the Gemara says there are rivers that if you see them, that they haven't been moved from the time that they were created, you should say a bracha on that also. So Rami Bar Abba said that it's if you see the Euphrates River, the Nahapras, upstream of the bridge of Bavel, you should say the bracha Oisei Masei Brachos. The Gemara says, but since the days of Rami Bar Abba, that river has been redirected as well, and you can only say the bracha if it's upstream from the Shavor area. Rav Yosef says it has to be upstream from Ihi Dekira. Okay, what about the Nahar Chidekel, which is called the Tigris? So where it says on that, it's got to be upstream from the Shabistana bridge. The Gemara says, why are they called these names? Chidekel is because its waters are chad and kal, they're light and sharp, meaning that they are easy to drink and they don't make you sick. And Paras is called that because it's from the word Peru or Vu, it is fruitful, that its waters come out of springs which don't dry up and aren't dependent on the rain. Now, Rava says something interesting here. The residents of Mechozo, which was on the Tigris River, the Chidekel, the reason why they are sharp is because they drink the waters of the Chidekel. The reason why they have a reddish complexion is because they engage in marital relations during the day. And the reason why their eyes are constantly wandering is because their homes are not well lit. Okay, next the Mishnah said you say a bracha on the rain. So the Mishnah said you say the bracha of hatoiv v'hametiv. The Gemara asks that this is not true. We have a brayz that says that from when the first drops fall and they land in a puddle and rain splashes up to meet it, you say the bracha, which goes as follows: Lanu, we thank you for every drop of rain that you brought down for us. And Rabbi Yochanan says, and you add, if our eyes, if our mouths were as full of song as the sea, and we still cannot thank you enough. Until the end where it says every spine should prostrate itself before you. Baruch Hashem Roiv Haidais, and some say it's Kel Haidais. We don't want to limit it to Roiv Haidais, which is a lot of Thanksgiving. It should be all the Thanksgiving. And the Gemara says you combine the two and you say Rav Kel Haidais or Rav Haidais Kel Haidais. You combine the two expressions. Now, either way, we see over here that you say a different bracha. You don't say Hatoiv v'Hametiv. So the Gemara gives a number of different ways of explaining when the two brachas are each said. First pshat, the Gemara says one is when you hear that rain fell, and one is when you saw rain falling itself. The Gemara says that can't be. When you heard that rain fell, that's like hearing any type of good news, and we know that the bracha on that is hatoiv v'hametiv. So why would you say a different bracha for that? So the Gemara offers another answer. The other bracha we say is when you have a little bit of rain, but hatoiv v'hametiv you say when there is a lot of rain. Or the Gemara says that it depends. If you own land, then you say Hatoiv HaMeitiv. If you don't own any land, so then you just say the bracha for others, then you would say the other one. And then the Gemara says, hold on a second. If you own land and it rains, you should say Shechianu. Like we saw, the halacha is that if you acquired something new, like you built yourself a house or you bought new clothing, you should say Shechianu. So if you own land and it rains, it's similar. You got something new and exciting. You should also say Shechianu. Where it says, no, it's as follows. The bracha of hatoiv v'hametiv you only say when it benefits a few people. Shechianu you say when it's just you. So if there's a partner with you, and you own land together with him, then you would say hatoiv v'hametiv. If it's just you, then you would say Shechianu. The Gemara will attempt to show that there are cases when you say hatoiv v'hametiv, even though it's just you who gets the benefit. Where it says, the halach is that when you have a boy, you should say Hatayv v'hametiv, but that's just you, not anybody else. Gemara says, no, it's you and your wife. So you say Hatayv v'hametiv together. Then the Gemara asks, what about when you hear that your father passed away? The Brisa says, first you say Baruch Dayan ha'emes on the bad news, and then you say Hatayv v'hametiv on the inheritance that you got. Gemara says, no, that's also referring to where there were multiple people there. You had brothers who inherited it along with you. Then Gemara asks, but then there's halacha that when you get a new bottle of wine, you should say Hatayv v'hametiv, right? We said when you change places, you have to say a hagafen again. But if you change wines, you don't have to. But you do have to add the bracha of Hatayv v'hametiv. Gemara says there are also other people who are sitting and eating together with you, and that's why you say the bracha of Hatayv v'hametiv.